Hey guys, Kelly with St. Johns County Parks and Recreation. I am here today to talk about sharks, and they are one of the most misunderstood creatures of the sea. First and foremost, for those of you who don't know me or where I work for St. Johns County. St. Johns County has 42 miles of coastline that you can find sharks off of. We also have intercoastal waterways where we can also find sharks. They're really cool species that I'm really excited to share with you today. I specifically work for our Parks and Recreation department. Our Parks and Rec department is a really diverse department filled with all types of outdoor recreation activities, from trails to waterway access to playgrounds to beach access to all of your fields where football and baseball and all of those active recreation sports take place. My job specifically is in our natural areas as one of your parks naturalists. So my job is to bring you educational material about our parks, about the animals living in our parks, as well as get you out there to experience the beautiful things that our parks have to offer. So we are still currently offering beach walks and kayak trips, and we're hoping as things start to potentially calm down again that we're able to offer more programming to you guys to get you out there enjoying our natural areas in Florida. Like I said, today we're going to talk about sharks, and so some of you associate this next clip of audio with sharks. So for those of you, this is the iconic sound of Jaws. I feel like this is the soundtrack to every shark that you ever visualize in your head. But there are some of you that are either a younger audience or you have a younger audience at home that maybe this is what you associate with sharks.
Baby shark, baby shark, baby shark. Mommy shark,
All right, so I apologize that you now have that song stuck in your head for today. But we have really kind of gone through the spectrum in society of kind of having that really fearful nature towards sharks where, you know, Jaws was king and you had that soundtrack to your head to sharks, to now having cute little baby sharks that we sing about. So sharks have kind of gone through this social transformation as they have become more popular and we've learned more about them. And so today I really want to talk about sharks we have here locally, some characteristics of sharks, some things that you can do to help sharks. So next time you hear either of these things, you know a little bit more about sharks. So let's talk about super basics. What makes a shark a shark? So what separates it from most of our fish species, from being part of our ray species? You know, like what are the characteristics of sharks that really dictate it goes into the shark family? So here are your characteristics. I want you to think of some in your head, but I'm going to give them to you while you're thinking. First, they have gills. So all of our shark species swim underwater. They all have gills. They all are able to breathe underwater just like our fish species. Where they become really interesting in that we have mainly bony fish that have bones just like you and I, sharks are entirely comprised of cartilage as far as structure. So if you feel your earlobe or your nose, both of those things are cartilage, and that is what makes up the structure for our shark species. They are also cold-blooded. Now you'll notice there's a little asterisk on the cold-blooded. That's because some of our larger shark species, like our great white sharks, actually have a slight ability to generate their own body heat. But for the most part, most of our shark species are going to be cold-blooded. There's only a handful that are the exception, and they're mainly the really large shark species. They all have fins. Not only do they have fins, they have specific fins in specific places. So they have that dorsal fin, they have two pectoral fins, they have a large tail, and then they have the additional fins right around their tail that make them indicative of a shark. And lastly, they technically lay eggs. So sometimes you can see like what's pictured, but black at the beach. Those are called mermaid purses. And those are shark eggs. They could also potentially be a stingray or skate eggs. Now, even though they lay eggs, just like some of our reptiles that lay eggs or have eggs, some of our shark species actually hold those eggs internally. And even though there's really no connection to mom, they're basically holding them inside and protecting them. So our larger species, once again, like great white sharks, like sand tiger sharks, they're going to actually give live birth. But those shark babies will basically come from an egg that have been hanging out in mom to stay safe. So we talk about sharks. There's some large, iconic shark species, but do any of you know actually how many shark species we have identified in the ocean? I say identified because there are so many things we still don't know about the ocean. We are still continuing to discover new species almost every day in regards to the ocean. So I want you to take a moment and think about how many different species of shark do we have swimming in all of our oceans worldwide? I'll give you a second to think about it. There's multiple of you watching. Take guesses and see who's the closest. All right, there are over 500 shark species. So the really large ones usually get all of the credit, right? Because they're deemed scary, or those are the ones that we report sightings of. But actually, there are lots of really tiny shark species. And so let's look at the smallest species of shark. Does anybody have a guess what the smallest species of shark? I'll give you a guess in that it was found in the deep depths of the ocean. It was only really relatively recently discovered. So take a guess. Is it really, really teeny tiny? Is it kind of tiny? Is it, how big is it? All right, you ready? So there are two sharks that are kind of tied for the tiniest shark species. One is the pale cat shark and one is the dwarf lantern shark. Both of these shark species we don't really know a whole lot about. In fact, the pale cat shark we only have one specimen of that we've ever recorded, and so we, based on best science guesses, we have an idea of how old it or how big it could get. These are super small shark species. They are found in the deep, dark depths of the ocean. Not a whole lot is totally understood about these species, but they are both just about 8 inches long, so under a foot. We have shark species that are under a foot long. That's crazy. And I hope this kind of hits home the idea that while those really large shark species that we hear all about are cool, we actually have a lot of shark species that are under 5 foot, that are under 4 foot, that are under 3 foot. And so some of our shark species are a lot smaller and not all these huge, crazy predators. Now, for the largest shark species, hopefully this is a little bit easier. This species is humongous. It is the largest fish in the ocean. It is not scary and vicious. A guess on what the largest shark species is and how long it can get. We talked about the smallest is about 8 inches. The largest shark species in the world can be up to 32 feet long. That is our whale shark. These are some of the most majestic creatures that live in our ocean. And here's the craziest thing, guys. These whale shark species, they're huge, but they eat the teeniest, tiniest things in the ocean. So they actually eat plankton. And so these guys are filter feeders. And so what that looks like when they feed is this. And this is kind of the same thing for our large whale species. They eat the teeniest, tiniest things in the ocean as well. Here's a video to show you how they eat. So that's it. These species spend their time underwater filter feeding. They're swimming along, opening and closing their mouth when they get a school of plankton that's big enough, or a group of plankton that's big enough. to go ahead and open their mouth and feed. Largest shark species in the world, guys. Look at it eat. Not so vicious, huh? So let's talk about sharks that we have here locally. You can find whale sharks off of our coast. But I want to look at some studies that were done by some local researchers and some of their findings of what we actually have from a research perspective. So in our TOLOMATO estuary, so if you go into the St. Augustine Inlet and you head north, we do have shark species, but we mainly have a really young juvenile shark species, which is a really interesting find for science. And we need a little bit more research to fully understand kind of what's happening here. But the theory is that these larger sharks are giving birth, right? Because some of them hold their eggs inside, maybe right offshore, right outside of the inlet, or maybe mom's coming into the inlet quickly and leaving the inlet. But they're having some sort of birthing event near the inlet, and then these baby sharks are basically taking refuge in the estuary until they can get bigger. That's the theory. Once again, we need some more science to kind of back that up. But we're having scalloped hammerheads, Atlantic sharp-nosed sharks, black-tip sharks, and fine-toothed sharks, according to the findings of some local research. Off our shore, or near shore that you could see from shore, we have spinner sharks, sandbar sharks, bonnethead sharks, which if you've been shoreline fishing, you've probably gotten a bonnethead shark. We have tiger sharks and bull sharks. Now this is just the beginning. We occasionally get great whites off of our coast. We occasionally get whale sharks off of our coast. So this is just a brief synopsis of really what we have around here. And just because it's not on this list doesn't mean it hasn't been seen or it won't be seen off of our coast. So let's take a closer look at some of the species that we have swimming right off of our coastline here in Florida. And I kind of want to hit home that this is a great time of year to go to the beach. It's a good social distancing activity. And I love when people ask me, like, are there sharks in here? Are they out here? Yes, they're out here. This is their home. This is where they live. So hopefully I can give you some more information about the individual shark species, as well as some of their senses and how they actually hunt and what those human-shark interactions really look like. So as we take a closer look, does anybody know or take a guess what the picture here is a close-up of on a shark? So this is a part of a shark that has been kind of really zoomed in, refined to get a better look at it. So as we take a closer look at shark species, this is a picture of shark skin. So their skin almost feels like sandpaper if you go the wrong way, but this is what a close-up of their skin looks like. It's kind of cool. So let's start with the scalloped hammerhead shark. I talked about how their babies are found in the TOLOMATO estuary. These guys at full length can get to be about 6 to 12 feet long. So they're a big shark. And the Florida record for the largest one ever caught or recorded is 991 pounds, so just shy of 1,000 pounds. These guys are found in temperate and tropical seas, really across the globe. They are inshore during the day and offshore at night, and that has to deal with hunting patterns. And their head is really uniquely adapted for hunting. So we will talk about shark senses, but these hammerhead species basically have an underwater metal detector, except they're not detecting metal, they're detecting prey. So really cool. We'll talk about what that sense is and how it works in a couple of slides. These guys predominantly are feeding on fish and squid and stingrays. And so when they're scanning their head underwater along the ocean floor, they're really looking for those stingrays. And from here on out, any of the species that you see as being ovoviviparous, that's a super fancy science term to basically mean mom holds on to those eggs and gives live birth, but those babies aren't necessarily connected to mom. So bonnethead sharks are the smallest member of the hammerhead family. So we had one of the largest members of the hammerhead family in the scalloped hammerhead shark in the last slide. These guys are really tiny and they're super cute. So they have more of a shovel-like head, but they use it the same way pretty much that the hammerheads do, the scalloped hammerheads do. These guys are about 2.5, potentially 4 feet long. 4 feet long would be a really long bonnethead shark. I don't know that I've seen one that long. The ones I tend to catch during fishing are closer to the 2.5 feet long. They usually typically weigh about 24 pounds max. And they like to live in the shallow estuaries and bays. So they're going to be in the colder months in those bays and those estuaries, and then they'll move in the warmer months to the deeper coastal waters. They eat crustaceans and small fish. They have the shortest pregnancy of any shark species, of the ones who hold them inside, at about 5 to 6 months. This guy gets a really bad rap, but he's really cool. So they're about 7 to 11.5 feet long. They can be up to about 500 pounds. These guys can really go anywhere. So they can be in the estuaries, they can be near shore, they can be way offshore, and they're kind of the alligator equivalent of the sea. So these guys are very opportunistic feeders. They will take a meal when they have an easy meal. They're not necessarily going to try to work very hard for a meal. If there's an opportunity to feed on something that's injured or sick, and they don't have to work very hard for it, that's what they're going to do. These guys too are ovoviviparous. And there's this myth out there that the reason that they're so aggressive is because they have the highest level of testosterone among any animal species. That's just not true. But they have this unique ability to live in freshwater. So I'll show you a video about their adaptation. But they, unlike most other shark species, can actually biologically or physiologically handle that saltwater environment. So typically anything that lives in saltwater is adapted for saltwater. It has a way to deal with the salt, a way to live in the salt. And when they move into freshwater, it's for very short periods of time because they can't handle the difference in the salt conditions. Bull sharks actually have an ability to handle the freshwater and can stay in freshwater for more sustained periods of time. The last thing I want to tell you about bull sharks is it was actually the inspiration for the movie Jaws. So even though in the large television production it got turned into a great white shark, the original story that Jaws kind of spun from and was birthed from was actually based on a bull shark. So here's a video for you about sharks and why sharks, bull sharks in particular, can handle going into those freshwater conditions. This is part of a Shark Week special. So as with some Shark Week specials, there's a little extra drama, but the science is there behind this video to kind of explain to you how they handle the freshwater conditions. So just enjoy the extra theatrics, but pay attention to kind of the facts and science that's being presented here.
This juvenile bull is doing what only a few rare shark species can do.
One thing that makes the bull shark unique from many other shark species is that they have the ability to tolerate fresh water. And to me, that makes them truly an incredible predator.
When a bull shark makes the transition from the ocean into rivers, fresh water moves through its gills into its body.
A lot of other sharks can't do this because their cells will absorb too much water and essentially explode and the animal will die. Well, the bull shark is different.
It has highly specialized kidneys, which rapidly process the fresh water and get rid of it.
Their urine rate increases up to 15 times, which means they're just constantly flushing that fresh water out of their system.
Bull sharks can swim in rivers. The question is why? This shark leads them 5 miles up the river and into the heart of the jungle. Then, after 2 hours of tracking, they lose the signal. But Craig thinks he knows why they're here.
This was a juvenile shark, and it moved straight upriver, and this makes perfect sense to me. I mean, there's a lot of big sharks along the coastline, and these small sharks are incredibly vulnerable to these large sharks.
Some shark species eat their young, including bull sharks. They'll devour anything they can get their teeth into. So it makes sense that young bulls might move upriver to get away.
So these juvenile sharks could be utilizing these upper reaches of the river to escape these big predators. And also, there's an abundance of prey, and if there's less big sharks, there's less competition.
The upper reaches of this river may be a perfect place for young bull sharks to avoid being eaten by their own kind. Except for one little detail. All they've done is swap one set of killing jaws for another. Because here, the crocodile is king.
All right, so you guys saw at the end there where it got kind of some shark theatrics, but did you guys catch how exactly these bull sharks are able to handle these freshwater conditions for a sustained period of time? Hopefully you did. If you missed it, the short answer is basically they just pee a lot. They just keep on peeing to get rid of that fresh water out of their system. Just kind of neat. Then we have our iconic great white shark. So we couldn't have this presentation without talking about great white sharks. And we do have some that are found right off of our coastline. But these guys can be 15 to 20 feet long. They can be over 5,000 pounds. And they're really a long-lived species of shark. And we think at least 70 years. So something to understand about our oceans is, relatively speaking to our land animals, we haven't been studying our oceans as long. So we think they can live at least 70 years. We may find out they can live way longer than that just as we continue to study them longer. They are typically found offshore, and they're eating really large prey items. So these are one of a couple of species that eat large sea turtles, that eat large mammals. And they're born already 5 feet long. So great white sharks are one of those species that give live birth, and those little baby sharks are 5 feet long when they start life outside of mom. They also have incredible power, so they have the ability to reach about 43 miles per hour in the water. And if you've ever seen any of the videos during Shark Week of them feeding, typically whatever they are trying to feed on, like a seal, is kind of above the surface, and they basically project themselves up and out of the water and towards that seal, and that's one of their hunting mechanisms, which is really neat to watch. So if you haven't seen that, check that out. But they are not always this man-eater, and we'll talk about the fact that most sharks are not actually man-eaters and they don't want to eat people. But I want to kind of bring that home with one of the largest great white sharks that have ever been recorded or filmed, and her behavior around divers. Now, I will preface this with, I would not recommend this. This is not something that necessarily should be doing, but this was a cool video that kind of came up just over a year ago that I think is really neat and captures the fact that these really large, really incredible animals are not out to just eat everything in sight.
Look at the shark the world calls deep blue. Stunning divers swimming right up behind them. TJ, you're here to tell us the story.
Look, I've gone diving with sharks. They were about 6-7 feet, Caribbean reef sharks, very safe. This is a 20-foot great white, and they chose to get into the water with this thing. We have the video, and would you believe this all had a happy ending? Believed to be the largest great white shark on record anywhere in the world, Deep Blue, as she's called, made a surprise appearance off the coast of Oahu this week. A team of divers was observing other sharks when Deep Blue showed up, and the divers jumped right in. 20 feet long, 8 feet high, this queen of the ocean was a gentle giant as diver Ocean Ramsey swam alongside her. Ramsey calls her the grandma shark and thinks grandma might even be pregnant.
So she's that big, gentle grandma just cruising around doing her job. She's just using our boat as a scratching post and just really being quite calm, cruise, and casual.
The shark made it here all the way from Mexico, where it was last spotted 5 years ago. Ramsey describes the breathtaking moment the enormous shark appeared.
The dolphins start to come up, and with the dolphins, she started to ascend, and it was kind of like she was being escorted by these dolphins that were dancing around her. It was just absolutely incredible.
The timing of the shark's visit comes as Ramsey pushes for stronger legislation to protect the mammoth creatures of the sea.
What's most important to me is that people are getting the images or the message of conservation. Sharks are not monsters. I'm happy and overjoyed to be able to be approached and to share the water with her.
All right, we say 20 feet, you know, great white big sharks. Let me give you an idea here. Straight. 20 feet. What's a 20-foot shark? What's a 20-foot shark? What's a 20-foot shark? Now, I know she said these are calm, docile creatures, but if you got something 2 tons this big in the water with you, that is going to scare the mess out of you, all right? But still, we have to understand these creatures, we're more a threat to them than they are to us.
It's dangerous what she was doing.
It's very dangerous. Do not do this at home. I can't believe I had to give that warning, but they're unpredictable. But this one, it was a calm shark. It didn't mistake her for a piece of food, but this is a great educational tool even to see how these animals behave.
Who swam with sharks?
Not us.
Wow,
You're the only one.
I'm the only one. It's be smart as
All right. So, like they said in that video, not something I would recommend doing. They were kind of doing some scientific research and they are used to swimming and being around sharks. As with any wildlife, I never recommend approaching them or touching them or handling them. Most of these folks who you see in a lot of these videos are hopefully conducting science to further understanding of the species. But that's kind of crazy. That's a huge shark. I'm good. I would not be swimming with her. But with that said, sharks do get a really bad rap. So shark and human interactions, although we feel like in our head they're happening all the time and these sharks are out there hunting for people and they're really scary and they're a huge threat to people, it's just not true. So we're going to look at some of the facts and some of the numbers that will dispel some of these myths. I have a kind of cute little cartoon here, but it says, but are they as terrifying as they seem? Find out next on Human Week. The reality of it is that we do way more destruction to shark species than they could ever do to the human race. There are more sharks killed every single year than sharks kill people, and by like a huge number, like it's not even close. So even if the sharks had like a large shark convention and they all got together and they were like, we're going after these humans, like they're terrible, they wouldn't make a dent compared to what we're doing to their population. So sometimes perspective is really important. So let's start with shark senses. So understanding how a shark interacts with its environment and its ability to interact with its environment can kind of help understand what's happening during human-shark interactions. So sharks have the same 5 senses that we have, but then they have these 2 extra senses that are fairly unique to sharks. And I want to kind of talk about how those senses play into how they hunt. So they have vision. Their eyes are adapted to handle lower levels of light, which makes sense because there's not all of that much light and it can get very murky in the ocean. Vision is something that they would use when they kind of get closer to their prey, but in general, they're not necessarily typically hunting using just sight. There are senses that we'll kind of go over that are way stronger, that they're really relying on a lot more than vision. And if you can imagine, even with goggles on a really good clear day, sometimes here locally, you can't really see that far into the ocean. So even though their eyes are a little more adapted to handle it, the longest they probably could see in the water would be about 50 feet. And that's incredible, but not typical. Touch. This is something else that's really important. So if we want to investigate our environment, if we want to see what something is, if we want to feel what something is, we have hands, right? Makes it super easy for us to grab onto something, to touch something, to feel something. They don't have hands. And one of the most sensitive parts on a shark body to actually touch and feel are basically that large nose right in front of their mouth. And so typically, those who have been attacked by sharks, who have been bitten by sharks, they tend to report that the shark bumped them. So like if you've got a surfer hanging out here, the shark basically bumped the surfboard, felt it, said, all right, this is kind of the consistency of something I would want to eat based on that bump. And then they kind of took an investigatory bite. So they do utilize that large nose to investigate their surroundings. So that is one of the ways that they can kind of see what's going on. They also have pretty good hearing. They can hear really low frequencies under the water. Now, this picture is just kind of like for fun, for a joke. They obviously don't have big floppy ears like we do. They would be getting swimmer's ear all the time swimming underwater. But they have ears and they can hear. It's mainly very low frequencies. And taste. So this is something I feel like a lot of people don't think about, but they have preferences of what they like to eat. And usually, like I said, those like surfers or people or who are standing in the water, whatever the case may be, they're typically there. They do the investigatory bump. They determine this is kind of fleshy. This is something that I might want to eat. They then take a bite to taste it. 9 times out of 10, they spit it right back out and they pretty much say, this is disgusting. Humans taste terrible. I don't want to eat this. And they swim away. Because sharks have a sense of taste. They have preferences. And people are really not on the list of preferences of things they want to eat. They want to eat fish. They want to eat stingrays. They want to eat sometimes seal, sometimes sea turtle. We don't taste like any of those things. And most of the time for shark food tastes pretty disgusting. The problem with that investigatory bite is that these sharks' jaws are very powerful, and obviously they have lots of teeth in their mouth. So that can obviously cause damage to the person who's been bit, and depending on where they've been bit and the severity of the bite, that can lead to really bad things and potentially fatalities. But the whole point of this is that sharks are not out there like actively hunting humans. And in fact, when they tend to bite a human, it's one bite and done because it just tastes gross. Smell. They have a very strong sense of smell. The range and the ability to smell changes a lot depending on the species, but smell is one of the senses they heavily rely on. They also have this sense called the lateral line. So it runs down the length of their body and it allows them to detect movements in the water. So like we talked about earlier, a lot of our shark species are opportunistic and they want to work as little as possible to eat. And so these guys can detect things that aren't swimming right in the water. So these are jerky, spastic motions from like a fish or something that might be injured or sick. And they can detect that kind of change in the swimming pattern from things nearby through this lateral line. So it's really an important sense for them to be able to kind of sniff out weak prey that's going to be an easy meal. And then they have this ampullae of Lorenzini, which is super fancy. And it has all of these holes basically on that underside of their snouts, of their noses. And it's really sensitive and it allows them to see electrical fields. And that's how, like I said, those hammerhead sharks are. And they're just kind of like metal detectors. And I'm not doing the best job of describing it or what it is, so I have a video to show you that will be way better about describing it. Once again, this is a Shark Week special, so there's some extra theatrics here. You can see by the title, it's called Ninja Sharks. But there is science in here, I promise. So kind of sit back and relax and enjoy this video.
The Ninja Sharks. An elite cast of assassins with highly evolved skills. From the whip-like tail of the Thresher to the built-for-speed body of the Mako, another ninja has a superior method of finding its prey. The Hammerhead. It's mastered the art of detection. All sharks sense electric currents generated by living things, using special receptors on their snouts. But hammerheads, up to 20 feet long, take this extrasensory skill to a new level. Thousands of receptors are packed in their unique head shape. A receptor, called an ampullae of Lorenzini, consists of a pore opening to a canal, leading to jelly-filled sacs. Each receptor detects a difference in voltage at either end of the canal.
On a hammerhead, there's more head, so there's more room for more pores. The pores aren't necessarily more sensitive, there's just more of them.
They have the ability to scour this larger area with this huge cephalofoil that broadens out their array of ampullae lorenzini. It's like this huge metal detector just running along the sand, trying to sense little minute things underneath them. And it does sense it better than any other shark.
Off the coast of Florida, marine biologist Craig O'Connell and his team prepare an experiment. He's built a custom decoy to test the power of the Hammerhead's super sensitive detection system.
So this apparatus right here is an acrylic plate, and these two tubes are actually going to be emitting an electric field that's going to mimic the bioelectric fields that come from Hammerhead's favorite prey, the stingray. We'll take the plate and we'll bury this plate beneath the sand. The idea is, maybe we'll be able to demonstrate that these sharks are really keying in on electroreception rather than just their sense of smell.
The team puts out a variety of prey items to tempt the hammerhead. Will it go for the easy and smelly options? Or the buried electric signal? The hammerhead makes a pass at each of the prey possibilities. But finally, goes for the plate. This test suggests how important the electromagnetic sense is for finding buried prey.
This animal knows the difference between one thing and the next thing, what it wants and what it doesn't want. It is very evolved. It is a very smart shark.
All right, so that was just an example of the hammerhead shark really relying on that ampullae of lorenzini for its hunting. And like I said, different shark species will utilize different senses. So our hammerhead species really rely on the ampullae of lorenzini, as you guys hopefully saw in that video. So now let's get down to the numbers. So we kind of have a better idea of how some shark species hunt, what they're looking for. We know that of the over 500 species of shark, really only a handful of them are above like 5 feet long. There's just not that many big sharks in perspective to the 500 that swim in our ocean. So these are stats from the Shark Attack files, which are compiled by the University of Florida. You can go online and dive into the data that they have from 1580 regarding shark attacks. And you can actually look at shark attack data across the whole globe. So I've just pulled out a couple of tidbits of numbers to share with you today. But if you want to check out those shark attack files, kind of cool. You can get lost in the numbers for a little bit and really see some of the interesting data and trends that they have. So in the United States from 1580 to present, how many documented, unconfirmed, or are confirmed unprovoked? So confirmed attacks that we have documentation for, unprovoked meaning someone was just swimming or surfing or standing in the water. They weren't actively messing with the shark or interacting with the shark, and then it resulted in a shark attack or bite. So this is not deaths, this is just simply people who have been bitten by a shark. So your options are from 1580 to present, 1500, 15,000, or 150,000. So choose wisely, A, B, or C. And the answer is 1,500. That's it, 1,500 confirmed shark attacks from 1580 to present. So you're like, okay, they probably don't have that much data from 1580 to today. So let's look at data specifically in Florida. And what is the top county in Florida for confirmed unprovoked shark attacks? And we're looking at specifically the time period from 1882 to today. So your options are Brevard County, which is that long, skinny county that runs along the east coast of Florida. You have Volusia County, which is 2 counties south of where we are in St. Johns County. Or is it right here where we live, right in our oceans in St. Johns County? So your options for the top county in Florida for confirmed unprovoked shark attacks from 1882 to today are A, Brevard County, B, Volusia County, or C, St. Johns County? And the answer is Volusia County, shark attack capital of the world. So from 1882 to today, Volusia County is here in red. They have 303 confirmed provoked shark attacks, and most of those are occurring in the New Smyrna area. The second county is Brevard County, so that's that long, skinny county just south of Volusia County. And then we have actually Palm Beach County at 76. And then for local reference, St. Johns County comes in fourth at 42, and then you have Duval County right behind it. So relatively speaking, though, in St. Johns County from 1882 to today, 42 shark bites over 150 or so years, not too crazy. And that's to 2000, technically not 2019, like halfway through 2019. So not totally to present. I'm missing a couple months of data, but still, maybe it would be 43. It wouldn't be anything crazy in a couple of months. All right, so based on all of the shark attack data, you can pull some interesting statistics. So one of them is in the United States, in what month have the most shark attacks occurred? Your options are July, August, or September. So it looks like it's going to be one of our warmer months. The question is which one? So A, July, B, August, or C, September? And the answer is actually September. So if you look at Florida shark attacks by month, we have this kind of curve that goes up with summertime and then kind of descends back down. Now this is due to a couple of things. One is those warmer water temperatures in the ocean. The other is human behavior, right? So in January and December, at least here locally and in most parts of at least half of Florida that's kind of colder, there's not too many people in the water. They might be on the beach, but there are very few people swimming in January and December compared to the summer months. So where you have more people in the water, you're going to have more potential for shark attacks. So from 1926, so almost over 100 years worth of data, we have the numbers here of when shark attacks kind of peak. And according to the data of confirmed unprovoked shark attacks, 103 attacks have occurred in the month of September. All right, next question for you. At what time have the most shark attacks occurred? So here in Florida, we're looking at the same amount of data. We have A from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., B from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., or C from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. So we have an early morning time, an evening time, and an afternoon time. So take your guess, A, B, or C. And the answer is A. Kind of surprising because typically if you listen to like how to avoid shark attacks, they'll tell you to avoid swimming at dusk and dawn. That's when sharks can tend to be hunting sometimes. But that's not what the data says. So if you look at this data of time of day of unprovoked shark attacks in Florida from 1926 to about 2019 is when I pulled this graphic. So this isn't the most recent one. You can see from 7 to 8 a.m. there's only 7. And then as the day goes on, it kind of goes up and it somewhat plateaus from about 11 to 3. Which, if you think about when people are going to the beach, these are peak time for people to go to the beach. And that 2 to 3 o'clock range, I would suspect, is about when your morning crew leaves for a late lunch or, you know, they've just been in the sun all day. And when your kind of afternoon crew comes, so it's after lunch, they've had lunch, they're going to the beach for the rest of the day. So that's a peak time for people to be at the beach and subsequently to be in the water. So this graphic says much more about people activity really than it does necessarily about shark activity. So time of unprovoked attacks in Florida kind of peaked right in the middle of the day there. I still would avoid being in the water early morning and evening. We do know that that is when some of our shark species are. All right, so what are people usually doing when they're bit by sharks? So you hear all these stories of all these people, they were diving, maybe they were on a reef and they got bit. You have people who are surfing, or maybe they're paddleboarding, or maybe they're just swimming or standing and kind of wading in the water. So what in Florida are people typically doing when they get bit by sharks? Are they A, diving, B, on a surfboard or paddleboard, or C, are they swimming? So take your guess. Let's see. Yeah, so this one should hopefully come as no surprise, but they're typically surfing or paddleboarding. They're doing some sort of board sport. So the graph looks like this. This graph only goes to 2015, but you can see that there's a rise from about 1980 to 2015 of what they call surface recreationalists, which means somebody who's on the surface of the water recreating, which basically boils down to surfing or boarding. And then you can see where divers are in orange, swimmers and bathers are in green, and that kind of transition zone of like entering or exiting the waterway, so walking in and out of the water, is in purple. And you can see the exiting and entering the water is consistently very low. Diving is fairly consistent from about 1960 to today. And then there's a gradual increase as well in swimmers and bathers. But once again, I really want to stress that a lot of these numbers say less about sharks and say more about what people are doing. We just have more people in the water. We have more people living near the coastlines, more people visiting our beaches, more people spending time in the water. And every time you put additional people in the water, you increase that potential risk of shark attacks, right? More people, more potential that one of them is going to get bit. So I want to clarify something. This is partly for humor and partly to kind of contextualize really what's happening in the water. So these sharks don't have these crazy superpowers. They're not actually ninja sharks or jungle sharks like you see on Shark Week. They don't have these crazy lasers on their head. There is no really large shark larger than a great white shark still in the ocean. Like the megalodons still don't exist. They're not jumping to get planes. They're not helicopter sharks waiting for, you know, helicopters to come rescue people out of the water and then attack. Like, they're just out there doing their shark thing, living their shark life, trying to survive, trying to find food to feed themselves. So this is typically what a shark sees, especially our larger species that do tend to bite our human recreationalists in the water. So you have to remember, we talked about sight being one of the senses that's not predominantly used to hunt. So vision is not one of the senses they necessarily rely on to hunt. They utilize it, but they're going to use a lot of their other senses in order to kind of zero in on their prey. So if they're just looking from the water, and we know that their sight isn't all that great, this is what they can see underneath the water. So you can see on the left here a human surfer with its arms and legs out. Looks eerily similar, if you don't have the best eyesight, to a sea turtle and to a sea lion, which those other two items, a sea turtle and a sea lion, are prey items for our larger shark species. So it's not that crazy to think about that a human surfer could be easily mistaken for any of these other prey items. And once again, I really want to drive home the point. They are not out there actively hunting people. Most of the time that they bite somebody, it is a case of mistaken identity. They do that bump. They feel that it's something fleshy that they would want to eat. They take an investigatory bite. They decide we taste absolutely disgusting, and they swim away. That is what happens like 9 times out of 10. So in 2018, how many fatal shark attacks occurred in the United States? So 2018, we either had A, 10, B, 5, or C, 1. How many people actually died from a shark attack in the United States in the entire year of 2018? All right, is it 10, is it 5, or is it 1? Either way, these are very low numbers. So take your guess, and the answer is 1. In 2018, one person in the entire United States died from a shark attack. Now, I understand that that's very tragic for the family that had to go through that and experience that. But I just want to put some context here because sharks get a really bad rap. There are a lot of people who have an irrational fear of sharks. And here are the things that you're more likely to die from than shark attacks. These things kill more people every year than sharks do. Falling coconuts, falling out of bed, being crushed by a vending machine, being struck by lightning. Guys, we are the lightning capital here in Florida. We get these crazy storms with lightning. You need to be more terrified of that than you do of sharks. And left-handed people using right-handed equipment. All right, so just perspective is important in life. You have coconuts to be more fearful of, vending machines to be more fearful of, lightning to be more fearful of than you do of sharks. Sharks, like I said, are out there living their shark life, and they really aren't out there hunting people, I promise you. So watch out for those coconuts. But there are some rational steps that you can take to stay safer in the water to lessen your risk of being attacked by a shark. Swim in groups, stay closer to the shore, avoid those twilight hours of dawn and dusk. Don't enter the water with an open wound. So if you have something that's still profusely bleeding, some of these sharks that hunt using their sense of smell will be attracted to that, and they're going to want to come check it out. Avoid shiny jewelry that could look like fish scales under the water, and refrain from really erratic movement. So if you're flailing around like an injured fish, you may attract a shark that wants to come and check that out. Like we talked about, it has that lateral line. It has that ability to detect these kind of more spastic movements in the water. So if you just remain calm and you don't kind of flop around like an injured fish, you'll be less likely to attract a shark. And I post this picture because I don't know that this guy knew that he was several feet away from a tiger shark. But a lot of time in the water, we're way closer to sharks than we probably even realize, and they just leave us alone. I really want to hit home. They have absolutely no interest in eating people. We taste disgusting. And now I want to kind of wrap everything up with how important sharks are. So hopefully I have replaced your fear of sharks with respect. You kind of better understand how they hunt, what the real numbers are, what the real potential risk is, or lack of risk, I should say, of being in the water with sharks. And I really want to focus on, especially our large shark species, how incredibly important they are to our oceans and what a bad idea it is to just get rid of all of them or to negatively impact their populations. So in order to kind of hit this home, there's a great video with some great visuals that I want you guys to watch to really understand why sharks are so important and why we need to replace our fear of sharks with respect, and we really need to support shark conservation because our oceans depend on having a healthy shark.
Why are sharks so scary? Bloodthirsty beasts just waiting out there in the waves to feast on human flesh. If only we could get rid of these guys, our vacations would be so much safer. Nothing to worry about while we're surfing and frolicking out there in the ocean. Except that's not the case. We don't have anything to fear from sharks in the ocean, no more than I have to fear in this swimming pool. Really, it's sharks who should be scared of us.
There's more than 400 species of sharks on Earth, and they've owned the ocean for more than 400 million years, since before the dinosaurs. Yet thanks to a combination of fear and neglect, we humans might just wipe them out in a few hundred. That bites. But why do we even care about sharks? You might think a few less sharp teeth in the sea would make for a better world. That's not true. Let's imagine just for a minute what would happen if we let that fear and neglect win. We ignore what scientists and nature are telling us. What if there were no sharks? By and large, sharks are big fish, and one of Mother Nature's simplest rules is big fish eat smaller fish, which eat even smaller fish. And some of those smallest fish eat Algae? Well, if we kill those biggest fish, those sharks, then instead of coral reefs, we could have this. Ugh. Or take my friend Ray. Ray likes to eat scallops, and this shark likes to eat Ray and his friends. So no shark, and it's an all-you-can-eat scallop Ray buffet. That's exactly what happened off the coast of North Carolina when sharks were overfished, and now there's no more scallops there. That's bad for Ray and bad for us, because I happen to love scallops. Without sharks, the sick and injured fish that they usually eat could throw schools into chaos. And it's not always about what sharks eat. Sometimes their mere presence can change the way that marine animals feed and behave. Most food webs are much more complicated than big fish eats little fish, which makes it hard to predict precisely what would happen in a shark-free ocean. But that doesn't mean it's a risk we should be willing to take. How about this? If you kill a shark, you pay for it. If you're in Palau, that'll cost you $2 million a piece. Research into the value of sharks to tourism show us that a living shark is worth way more than a dead one. Sharks keep ecosystems in balance, and that balance is the product of thousands, sometimes millions of years of evolution and adaptation. We don't know how or even if the oceans can respond to such sudden changes, because sharks are slow-growing species that don't breed often, and that makes them extra vulnerable. The ecosystems that sharks help manage cover 2/3 of our planet. They provide us with more than half of the oxygen that we breathe, and 3 billion people rely on them for food and their livelihood. Whatever might happen in a world without sharks, it's not good for us. You've probably noticed that number getting bigger. That's how many sharks were killed while you watched this video. Each year, humans kill more than 100 million sharks, 70% for their fins, which are made into soup, the rest by habitat destruction or just thrown away as bycatch from fishing. How many people do sharks kill? Not many. Come on in here. Let's have some real talk. Time after time in movies and during certain week-long specials on cable TV, sharks are portrayed as these dangerous monsters, toothy terrors of the deep that are just out to get us. But if movies have taught us anything, it's that the scariest monsters are the ones we don't see, the ones that remain mysterious. All this week.
All right, so I hope that video kind of gave you multiple reasons why sharks are important. So they keep things like stingray populations in check. They truly are our vultures of the sea. So a lot of times in our terrestrial habitats driving around, we see vultures eating roadkill. And you know what you see in the morning when you drive home from work isn't there anymore. Why? Because they ate it. They went ahead and got rid of it for us. So our sharks serve that same purpose in the ocean. They're cleaning up all of these things that are sick or injured or die that could potentially spread disease to other animals and really cause a collapse of certain species. So what you can do to help sharks, reduce plastic use. So we know that studies have shown that there will be potentially more plastic in the ocean than fish by 2050. That's in 30 years. I don't know about you, but there's something inherently wrong with that visual of more plastic being in the ocean than fish. So anytime we can reduce our plastic use and make sure that we're recycling our plastics properly, help pretty much all marine life, including sharks. Educate yourself. So hopefully today is just the tip of the iceberg of your shark research and things that you're going to look into. I encourage you to replace your fear of sharks with respect. I encourage you to support shark conservation efforts. So there's a group called OFFSHORE that I will highlight in the next slide, and it's doing some amazing work for shark species and for other species now. It's kind of branched out beyond sharks to look at its patterns of where it's going, where it's mating, where it's having babies, so we can better understand these species so that we can better protect them. And so support sustainable seafood. So here in the United States, you can get this app called Seafood Watch, and it tells you what seafood to eat and where from and what time of year to promote sustainable fishing habits. So as he talked about, we are losing shark species to shark fin soup. This is a delicacy in Asia. And here in the United States, we are losing a lot of sharks to bycatch. So We have a lot of fisheries that are using fishing practices that result in sharks accidentally being caught, even though they're not the target species. And sometimes that can that can lead to them being unfortunately killed. So just some perspective again, over 100 million sharks are killed every single year. Over a third end up in shark fin soup. On average, and really this is a high average, and this is globally, about 6 people die from sharks every year, whereas 11,000 sharks are killed every single hour. So once again, perspective and context is super important. We do way more damage to the shark species than they really could ever do, even if they had a shark convention and organized shark attacks on people. So these guys are really important to our oceans. We want to make sure that we maintain them. If you have some time today, I encourage you to look into OSearch. So OSearch is an amazing organization, and they put trackers on sharks, and they produce these maps. So if you go to the OSearch website, you can get lost for hours in the global shark tracker. And with some of the shark tracks, you can actually watch videos of them being tagged. So there is a shark named Lydia. There's also another shark named Catherine, both of which have been spotted right off of our coast. And these sharks are amazing and very important to research because we, before this shark tracking program, didn't fully understand the range of shark species. So not only do they track great white sharks, but they track tiger sharks and lemon sharks and lots of different kinds of sharks, and all over the world. So seriously, go to OSearch, take like an hour and just explore the maps, click on the different sharks, search for certain shark species, see what's pinged recently. It's a cool site, but they're doing some amazing work. Groups like 4 Oceans are doing great work with removing debris from our beaches and from our oceans and creating jewelry to kind of support their effort. So any of these groups are great groups doing great things. So normally this would be the time that I would ask if anybody has any questions. Feel free to put them in the comment section and I will try to get to them. But I just want to leave you with a little shark meme that says, we're not ruthless man eaters and more like accidental man chasers. So once again, if you learned nothing today, I hope you replace your fear of sharks with respect. I hope that you understand that they are a species, especially our large shark species, are in huge decline directly related to human behavior, and that we really do need them in our oceans. They're a huge part of their ecosystem and what make our oceans function and make our oceans special. So we do need shark species. I encourage you to check out Shark Week with a critical eye and understand when it's science and when it's over exaggeration. There is a lot of good information to be kind of taken from Shark Week, but hopefully this gives you a good foundation to kind of know what's an exaggeration and what's real science. Well, thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I look forward to the day that we can be in person to give these presentations, but I think it's going to be a little bit longer. Once again, if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comment section. I'll see you guys later. Bye.